This is going to be a case study using ExpressDCF, where we're going to look at QC Copper, which is a company that has this Opemiska project that it's at the resource stage. They've got a resource, and they are planning to, on the back of that resource, do their first economic analysis, a preliminary economic assessment. And as an investor, what I would like is to be able to guess the outcome of that economic analysis and base an investment decision today on that work. So the latest resource table for this project, I'm just pulling off of their technical report. And they've broken this out into both a open pittable resource and then also what they're calling an out of pit, which I'm interpreting as an underground resource. And they're telling me, they're saying to the public that this PEA is likely to focus just on an open pit scenario. So I'm just going to work with these top numbers for now. So what I'll do is go back to my site and go to ExpressDCF. And this is a resource stage project. So we'll select resource stage and hit submit. And now what this is doing is showing me some financial or evaluation metrics for a mining project based on a resource number. And right now these numbers aren't looking very good because it's based on a bunch of default numbers that we're going to fix. And those assumptions we need to address relate to the ore body, the operations, and some economic assumptions. But just to give you an idea, the net present value is listed here at a discount rate of 15%, which is a bit high. And then we'll showing you the IRR, and the what's called the MOIC, which is the margin on invested capital. Okay, so a couple things. Well, to get started, we just need to start adding things that we already know. And we know something about the resource. We know that at least that pit-constrained resource they have totals up to 97 million tons, and that includes the measured, the indicated, and the inferred. And the grade of all that ends up being about 9.9% copper. So we can start making these adjustments. I'm not going to change too much else here. But for right now, I am going to give us a metal price that's a little more reasonable. I'm going to go with 8,500. It's a little lower than spot price today. But that's $8,500, not per troy ounce, but per metric ton. Now there's a bunch of other assumptions here I'm not going to touch just yet. I'm just going to hit submit and then see what happens. Okay, so in the back, the system has taken those numbers we input and then all those default values that we haven't touched yet and crunched the numbers and came up with these valuation metrics. Now, what we need to do is start systematically going through each of these assumptions and saying if we can improve upon them. And one is this reserve conversion, and now that's the percentage of the resource that's actually going to make its way into a mine plan as ore. The default value here is 33%, but I'm not satisfied with that number. And I'm going to hit this AI button next to that field, which is going to give me access to another tool to help me predict based on a couple of things, help me predict what the reserve conversion for this particular project is going to be. And let's see here. These numbers are based on these assumptions about the commodity, about the grade, the tonnage, metal price, etc. And one field it ends up being very important is really what we call the M&I conversion, or how much of the total resource has converted to the higher confidence categories of measured and indicated as opposed to inferred. Now, I happen to know that they've converted quite a lot. I think it was about 90% of what they've in the resource that they're reporting, they've got about 90% of it in that M&I category, and the rest only 10% inferred. Okay, so we can go with that number, but it is important. You know what? I'm actually going to do 100%. Now I know they haven't converted 100% to M&I, but because I'm trying to predict the outcome of a preliminary economic assessment, the rules are that you can actually take inferred and include them in a mine plan in one of these studies. That's not the case in a pre-feasibility study or a feasibility study, which are the more advanced engineering studies, economic analyses that you can do. So I'm actually going to just say, because of that little quirk, I'm going to make this value 100%. And I could see that, okay, instead of that 33% default value of how much is going to convert to reserve or tonnage in the economic analysis, my model is suggesting a base case value of 70%. And I'm going to take that number. We'll talk about upside and downside cases a bit later. But what I'll do is, just take that 70% number and punch it into this field here. And that's an important one because it's actually going to change really the size of the project. The throughput rate is going to be much higher as if we're shoving 70% of the resource through a processing facility versus only 33%. And we see a big jump. We just making that one change, we're seeing NPV of 200 million at 38% IRR. And again, that's 200 million at a very high 15% discount rate. Okay, so what else can we change? I'm going to make this assumption that they need to do 3 years of additional work, and they're going to spend to get it to that reserve stage, and they're going to spend something like $30 million to get there. I'm just going to leave that as it is. The company might actually have a more refined estimate, but I don't know what it is at the moment. Okay, so we've taken care of the ore body assumptions. Now let's look at the operations. How much of it is going to be from underground production? Well, based on what they've said, they're going to look really at this PEA is going to be focused on open pitable resources. So I'm going to keep this default assumption of 0. None of it's going to be produced from underground. How many years are it going to take to actually build this thing once it gets sanctioned? I'm going to assume 2 years. And then years of operation. Let's take a closer look at that one. So based on the size of the reserve, the size of the resource, and the fact that this is a copper project, my model is suggesting that the mine life is probably not going to be 10 years. It's going to be longer than that. It's a pretty decent size reserve, and the base case is saying, well, how about 18? 18 years is probably where you're going to land. If you get lucky, maybe it's only 13 years. If you get a little unlucky, then you have to stretch it over 24 years. And so that it'd be nice to be able to, due to discounting, you want to be able to process as much as you can in as little time as possible to a point. So let's go with 18 years for the mine life. And now that is gonna hurt us because we're stretching the cash flows out over a longer period of time, and they're getting hit pretty hard by this discount rate of 15%. So we see a market decrease in the NPV. Now I'm going to assume that you can't go from 0 to 100% production in a day. There's usually this ramp up period where once you've built the thing, you're slowly getting the production up to a point where you're at full capacity. And I'm going to assume that's going to last. That ramp up period is going to last a year. Now, process recovery. This is an interesting one for this project. The suggestion by my model is about 84 or 85%. And so I can go with that, but I have a little more information. The company has provided some information about historic production. This used to operate as an underground mine, and they were getting, I think, 95% recovery on the copper and kind of maybe mid-80s for gold. And so, it's going to be a different mine. There's going to be a different head grade. So the recovery you can't exactly expect to be the same, but that is giving me some information. That past production is giving some information that the recoveries are going to be pretty good here, and so I'm actually tempted to take this upside value instead, just to give them some credit for this evidence that they're tabling about the good recovery, metallurgical recovery for their for this deposit. So I'm going to make recovery 90% instead of 80%, and that's my own subjective call. And that's made an improvement to our valuation. I'm going to assume 10% dilution, given that this is an open pit mining operation. Waste to ore ratio, look at that one. Now they're saying, well, the model is saying it's going to be about 3.4 waste to ore ratio. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than that, just because based on what I was looking at in their technical report, just looking at the sections and 3D views of the deposit, this deposit is not this bulbous porphyry deal. It seems very structurally controlled. You have these narrow structures that are intensely mineralized, which is allowing them to get these elevated grades that they're bragging about. So yeah, I'm tempted to go with I'm actually surprised it's as high as 6. I'm going to just kind of pick a happy medium. I'm going to say 5. How about that? I'll say the waste to ore ratio is going to be 5 to 1, which will hurt us. I got to move a bunch more waste out of the way. And let's see. So for the operations, looks like we're done there. And the economics, let's start looking at some of these assumptions. So mining cost at $250. Now mine, and I've done this before, and I was looking at this, and I was a bit surprised at how high my model was predicting these mining costs. And it's still, if you look at the raw data, what you can see down here is these blue histograms. These are just all the data used to train the models, just shown on a histogram. You kind of have these two populations. You got this kind of low mining cost population, which is really the open pit scenarios, and this is cost per ton moved. And then you have this other distribution at the high end, which is really your underground mining. And my model's suggesting that, hey, you're really kind of on the high end of uh, the open pit mining cost distribution. So, but if I actually, and a lot of that is just based on the throughput rate, the ore mining rate. And, if I bump this up to something, I think it was in maybe kind of 5,000, that comes down like really considerably. And so this kind of gets into some of this more high level analysis that you can do. But if I shorten the mine life a little, I'm going to it's really going to require me to buy a bigger plant with higher throughput, and that's significantly bringing down my cost for mining. And so, yeah, I'm tempted to say, I don't even know if I was that high, but what happens at 4,000 or maybe 4,500? So I think what I want to do, I mean, if I were the CEO of this company and I saw mining costs that high, I'd say, well, let's try and optimize this a little bit. Can we come up with a shorter mine life that gets us and requires us to buy a bigger plant, but at the same time we can really bring those mining we'll realize these what's it called, economies of scale with a bigger operation, and improve the economics. So let's revisit mine life and say, okay, well, instead of running it for 18 years, 13 years is not a bad assumption. Maybe a little bit aggressive, but we've got a reason to do it. So let's go here and change this to 13 years. And then go back down here to mining costs and take another look. And so now it's saying, okay, well, at a throughput rate of this now, which is much higher, we're going to see, we can expect kind of like a 230 range mining costs per ton moved. So I'm actually going to, and it's very subjective, right? But I'm trying to use what I know plus these models, this artificial intelligence plus human intelligence, to come up with something that I'm comfortable with. So I'm going to make that change. Let's see. I can processing cost. Processing cost is coming in at 12.3, which seems okay. I know they're going to produce a concentrate, so it's not like a really cheap heap leach thing. So I'm going to say $13. I'm hitting submit every time I put in new data because it does have some advantages for pre-populating some of these fields. So let's look at G&A. I'm going to take 314 for G&A. And one thing, let's talk about discount rate in a second, but right now let's look at construction CapEx. You got to build the thing, how much it's going to cost you. So this is coming in about $290 million bucks. So I could go with that, and I think it'd still look okay. But the company is suggesting that they've got this infrastructure advantage, and I kind of want to give them credit for that. I'm not quite sure how much, but if I just gave them, say, 25 million, take 25 million off that CapEx number to account for this infrastructure advantage that they're touting. Is it the right number? Probably not, but but again, I'm trying to bring in some of this other information I have to bear, and doing it in a very subjective way. And then finally, sustaining capex. So they've got to, every year on average, they're going to need to have these capital outlays to buy new equipment or to make adjustments to the plant and whatnot. And that's coming in at 8. The base case is 891, so I'm going to go with that, which is pretty much 9. Okay, so based on that analysis and using a 15% discount rate, I'm saying that the net present value of that project is $135 million with an IRR of 28%. And that's, to me, that's looking, that's given me comfort. I actually bought some of this just the other day on the back of this analysis. But I keep saying 15% is high. I don't think that these guys are going to actually run their cash flow model at a 15% discount rate, just because there's a bit of kind of lemmings to the sea approach where a lot of people argue about what the discount rate is even supposed to represent, let alone which value to use. I think I've recently seen it as low as 5%. I think that was really before the interest rates have gone up, but that would push the NPV up to over $500 million. If I had to guess, I'm saying they'd probably come in around 10%. So, in a very short amount of time, I've been able to make this prediction, which what I set out to do is let's predict how a PEA what might turn out before they actually do it, just based on what we know about the resource and the project to date. And then with that, I have this perspective that other people don't have that I can base a investment decision on. So I don't think, personally, I don't think that they're going to struggle to put together a PEA with some attractive economics. And so that's how I use this tool to kind of get to that place. There's one other feature I want to show here, is that so in the background I'm creating this admittedly simple but useful cash flow model, and the more typically that exercise is done in Excel. So what you can do is actually export that information. Let's see. You can export that. Save. The system will build an Excel file in the background for you, and then you can export it and bring it into your Excel on your own computer. And let's see if I can get this thing to pop up for me. There it is. It's on another screen. Let me bring it over. And so I can, and you can see the, it's not very many lines, maybe less than 20 lines really. And you can see the production schedule, the tonnage and the grade, and the reserve development costs are coming in here. I can see the construction capex coming in years 4 and 5, the order waste ratio. So all of that, all the important information to calculate really what I want is these discounted cash flows at the bottom that I can then sum up and get a net present value and get a IRR. And then in this environment, then you can start making some, if you're comfortable with how simple it is, in here you can start adding some complexity in detail. One thing I might do is the company said, "Hey, we got this shared information about a starter pit that they ran, where um, it's a within the larger pit. There's a smaller pit where you can get to better grades, lower ore to waste ratio, waste to ore ratio. So you can start monkeying around with the production schedule, for example, and give them maybe higher copper grades in the first couple of years, and maybe lower waste to ore ratio in those same years, and then jack up the waste to ore ratio in later years, and then consequently bring down the head grade, and start seeing how that impacts the evaluation. Okay, so there you go. That's ExpressDCF. It's how you use it, and yeah, visit my site, reach out, and I'll put something in the description to help you guys reach out if you want to trial this. But it's a really useful tool. It's very fast. Gets me where I want to be. I want to take a resource and I want to project the economic analyses that have yet to be published, and in a sense get ahead of the curve and make my investment decisions now before others get the benefit of that perspective. Okay, thank you very much.